Hi guys, welcome back to Christy's Book Corner. I'm your host, Christy Mason, and today we're gonna do Inkheart by Cornelia Funk, and we're gonna do chapter 25. It's a short chapter, so let's get on to it. Chapter 25, The Wrong Ending. Fenagolo said nothing for a long time after Mo had finished his story. Paula had gone off long ago in search of Pippo and Rico. Maggie heard them running over the wooden floorboards above them, back and forth, jumping, sliding, giggling, and squealing. But in Fenagolo's kitchen, it was so quiet you could hear the tick of the clock on the wall by the window. Does he have those scars on his face? I expect you know what I mean. The fairies treated the cuts. That's why there are only slight scars left. Little more than 3 pale lines on the skin. Is that right? Fenagolo looked inquiringly at Mo, who nodded. Fenagolo looked out the window again, brushing a few crumbs off his pants. Bastus scared him, he said. They both fancied the same girl. Mo nodded. Yes, I know. A window was open in the house opposite, and you could hear a woman scolding a child inside. I suppose I ought to feel very, very proud, murmured Fenagolo. Every writer wants to create lifelike creatures, and mine are so lifelike they'll walk straight off the page. That's because my father read them out of the books, said Maggie. He can do it with other books too. Yes, of course. Of course, Fenagolo nodded. A good thing you reminded me. Otherwise, I might start taking myself for a minor god. Mightn't I? But I'm sorry about your mother, although, depending on how you look at it, that wasn't really my fault. It's worse for my father, said Maggie. I don't remember her. Mo looked at her, startled. Of course not. You're younger than my grandchildren, said Fenagolo, thoughtfully. I'd really like to see him, he added. Dustfinger, I mean. Naturally, I'm sorry now that I thought up such an unhappy ending for the poor fellow, but it somehow seemed right for him. Ask Shakespeare. Puts it so well. Everybody plays his part, and mine is a sad one. He looked out into the street. Something fell and broke onto the floor above them, but Fenagolo didn't seem particularly interested. Are those your children? Asked Maggie, pointing up at the ceiling. Heavens help us, no, my grandchildren. One of my daughters lives in this village too. They're always visiting me, and I tell them stories. I tell half the village stories, but I don't feel like writing them down anymore. He turned to Mo with an inquiring look. Where is he now? Dustfinger, I can't tell you. He doesn't want to see me. He doesn't want to see you. He got quite a shock when my father told him about you, added Maggie. But Dustfinger must be told what happens to him. She thought. He must. Then he'll understand why he really can't go back. And all the same, she thought next, he'll still be homesick forever. I must see him. Only once. Don't you understand? Fenagolo looked pleadingly at Mo. I could just follow you, unconspicuously. How would you even know who I am? I want to find out if he really looks like the way that I imagine him. That's all, however. Mo shook his head. I think you'd better leave him alone. Nonsense. Surely I can see him whenever I like. After all, I invented him. And you killed him off, Maggie pointed out. Well, Finnegola raised his hands hopelessly. I want to make the story more exciting. Don't you like exciting stories? Only if they have happy endings. Happy endings, Finnegola snorted scornfully, and then listened to what was going on upstairs. Something or someone had landed heavily on the wooded floorboards. Loud howls followed the thud. Finnegola strolled to the door. Wait here. I'll be back in a minute, he called, disappearing into the corridor. Mo, whispered Maggie. You've got to tell Dustfinger. We've got to tell him he can't go back. But Mo shook his head. He won't want to listen. I promise you. I've tried more than a dozen times. Perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea to bring him together with Finnegola after all. He might well be more likely to believe his creator than me. With a sigh, he brushed a few cake crumbs off Finegola's kitchen table. There was a picture in Inkheart, he murmured, raising the palm of his hand on the tabletop as if to conjure up the picture itself. It showed a group of women standing under an arched gateway, in splendid clothes, as if they were going to a party. One of them had hair as fair as her mother's. You can't see the woman's face in the picture. She has her back turned, but I always imagine it was her. Crazy, isn't it? Maggie placed her hand on his. Mo, promise me you won't go back to the village, she said. Please, promise me you won't try to get the book back. The second hand on Finegolo's kitchen clock was dividing time into painful small segments. At least, Mo answered. I promise, he said. Look at me and say it. He did. I promise, he repeated. There's just one more thing I want to discuss with Finegolo, and then we'll go home and forget about the book. Happy now? Maggie nodded, although she wondered what else there could be to discuss. Finnegola returned with a tearful Pippo on his back. The other two children followed their grandfather, looking crestfallen. Holes in the cake and now a dent in his forehead, too. I think I ought to send all of you home, Finnegola told them crossly, as he put Pippo down on a chair. Then he rummaged around in the big cupboard until he found a band-aid, which he stuck not too gently on his grandson's cut forehead. Mo pushed his chair back and stood up. I've changed my mind, he said. I'll take you to Dustfinger after all. Finnegola turned to him in surprise. Perhaps you can make it clear to him once and for all that he can't go back, Mo continued. Goodness knows what he might do next. I'm afraid it could be dangerous for him. And I do have this idea, rather a weird idea, but I'd like to talk to you about it. Weirder than what I've heard already? I'd say that's hardly possible. Finegolo's grandchildren had disappeared into the cupboard again. Giggling, they closed the doors very well. I'll listen to your idea, said Finegolo, but I want to see Dustfinger first. Mo looked at Maggie. It wasn't often that he broke a promise, and he clearly felt far from comfortable about it. Maggie could understand that only too well. He's waiting in the square, said Mo hesitantly. But let me talk to him first. In the square here? Finegolo's eyes widened. That's wonderful. With one stride he was standing in front of the little mirror, hanging next to the kitchen door, running his fingers through his black hair almost as if he were afraid Dustfinger might be disappointed by his creator's appearance. I'll pretend I don't see him until you call me, he said. Yes, thanks. That's the thing to do. There was a clattering in the cupboard, and Pippo stumbled out in a jacket that came down to his ankles, and a hat so large that it had slipped right over his eyes. Of course, Finegolo took that hat off Pippo's head and put it on his own. That's it. I'll take the children with me. A grandfather with 3 children. Nothing about that sight to make anyone uneasy, is there?" Mo just nodded and pushed Maggie out into the narrow hallway. As they walked down the street leading back to the square in their car, Venigolo followed a few meters behind them, with his grandchildren running and jumping around him like three puppies. That's the end of chapter 25. Next chapter is chapter 26, and we will read that next time. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to Christy's Book Corner, and don't forget to hit the notifications bell to be notified when I upload another video. And don't forget to dare to dream. Bye, guys.